reality is debatable. Mysteries, mindfuck and magic. A podcast where the imaginal meets the phenomenal. With Bernhard Reicher and Reicher Stark.
On Reicher and Stark, we explore magic and the paranormal, fiction and reality. I'm Bernhard Reicher, and in February 2018 I met Dr. Jeffrey Kripal at a symposium organized by the Carl Gustav Jung-Institut in Zürich. In his lecture, Jeff talked about how we are born into stories, social and historical stories, religious ones, stories of general worldviews, and so on. Stories that don't necessarily work anymore. Paranormal events, especially, lend themselves to the deconstruction of these stories and can possibly help construct new ones, new realities. I asked him to expand on this a little bit more after the symposium. We were quite tired, so it's a rather short conversation, but nonetheless an enlightening one, as always with Jeff. So I'm sitting here with Jeff Kripal. Thank you for your time, and I was amazed by your lecture today at the Jung-Institut in Zurich. You talked about the function, or one of the functions of the paranormal, of deconstructing our stories we're born into. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I think the paranormal has both this deconstructive and this sort of potentially constructive function. If you listen to people who've had these experiences, they're often in moments in their lives of transition, or they're living in a story or a cultural system that doesn't quite fit. And often I think a paranormal experience is a kind of way of getting one's attention, both in the sense of helping one realize that one's caught in a story, or one's caught in a cultural paradigm, but also trying to edge one out of that paradigm or that story. So I think this is why paranormal experiences are often trickster-like, or often absurd. They're taking whatever framework we have and they're just flipping it, or they're just turning it inside out. And I think when they develop further, then they're sort of goads to help us create another world, essentially, a future myth that we'll have to grow out of as well, by the way, down the road. So there's just this never-ending process of kind of deconstructing and reconstructing worlds.
So there's something or someone there that says to us, hey, your story just doesn't fit anymore. And you have to adapt, you have to evolve into a new story, a new paradigm. And that's as well individually as collectively, I suppose.
Right.
And what do you think? The paranormal is on the rise in the last years. So that would mean that our collective story has to be abandoned. Am I correct in that?
I think reports of paranormal phenomena may be on the rise, but I doubt the phenomena are on the rise.
Okay.
You know, I think they're with us always, and I think these experiences are happening every second of every day, you know, around the world, regardless of one's culture or one's upbringing, but that they get suppressed essentially by different cultural worldviews and religions, and that maybe that ability to suppress them is weakening.
Okay.
And that's maybe why we see this rise. And I also think we may detect a rise in paranormal phenomena because we're who we are. We want another world. Mm-hmm. You know, people who are interested in the paranormal tend not to be the same people who believe in some past worldview. They tend to be people who are interested in creating another worldview.
Yeah.
I think it's not always. That's not a universal for sure. But I think this is why a lot of conservative religious people are rightly suspicious of paranormal phenomena, because they're deconstructing these conservative worldviews. And it doesn't mean that the paranormal is always aligned with a kind of progressive liberal worldview. I'm not suggesting that either. But I do think they often have this deconstructive component to them.
So it may as well be that we are partly the source of these events, because we want to change it. In The Secret Body, you write about this metaphor of the film projector and the movie.
Yeah.
And both of that is us.
Yeah.
I like that very much.
Yeah.
Because that's my non-dualistic worldview.
Yeah.
And,
that's really what I think at the end of the day. I mean, that's a metaphor. It works and it doesn't work, but I do think this is us. But us in a kind of grand, kind of cosmic way, not us as in Bernhard or Jeff.
Yeah. So, and not even in this simplistic view of a higher self or something like that, or...
No, I mean, that's part of it, but I think it's
even beyond that.
Yeah, it's weirder than that, as I like to say.
Yeah. For me, that explains so much. When I grew up, I loved all the stories about the paranormal, and I experienced many of them, and I just never understood why people are not interested in that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't explain why they are so important.
Yeah.
But now I have this way of describing it, because they crack open our worldview.
Yeah.
They show us that there is something more.
And of course, people who are invested in the present worldview, and of course most of us are, would either be uninterested or would be actively against those sorts of experiences.
And that's also the importance of giving context to these things, because then they are not so traumatic anymore.
Yeah.
I think.
If you can think in this way.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think for, at least in the States, one of the evangelical Christian responses to the paranormal is that, it's demons. And again, that's not entirely inaccurate. I mean...
it may be a part of it.
Yeah. I don't believe in demons, but I believe that some paranormal phenomena are demonic vis-a-vis a conservative religious worldview, whatever it is. And by demonic, I simply mean deconstructive. I don't mean demons. And so I think that's a kind of intuition, a kind of religious intuition that's not entirely...
It's something that menaces the status quo.
Right.
Yeah.
But if that's not your status quo, if that's not your worldview, then they're not menacing, actually. Hence, you growing up.
Yeah.
Then they become a moment of fascination or awe.
Exactly.
And that's what I meant today when I was talking about the sacred, is it's awe-filled and it's aw-ful. It's got this both and going.
The mysterium, tremendum, and fascinans.
Yeah. And it depends on us, on how it's perceived. It might be the same exact presence, but if you're ready for it, it's positive, it's fascinans. And if you're not ready for it, it's tremendum, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think, actually. I think it's really a function of the human organism or the human individual who's encountering it.
So it would be probably a good idea to get on good terms with the trickster.
Yeah, but that's tough. That's a hard sell.
What would be a good possibility to train yourself in get accustomed to a new worldview?
One of the ways I've summarized it is to think in terms of the both and not the either or. Just to abandon binary black and white thinking and to move towards some kind of paradox, some kind of both and. I think that's fundamental.
Yeah. And that's the way of the trickster as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
The both and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also think the other really basic move is what I call simply to turn around. So I would say all religious worldviews are in some way about belief. And belief is always a turning back to a previous revelation or a previous enlightenment or a previous event.
Mm-hmm.
And so the religious life becomes an attempt to get back or to approximate or to believe in something that occurred in the past. And I think to create a new world, you have to turn around and you have to look to the future and you have to say, okay, that was a revelation, that was interesting, but it's still happening and it's going to happen well into the future. And I think that basic turnaround is sort of fundamental to whether someone is living in the past or living toward the future.
Mm-hmm. So to have the consequence to play the stories out in a new way, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or to invent totally new stories.
I think belief is a problem.
Mm.
I think when you believe, you shut down. I mean, it opens up other things, but basically belief is an affirmation of a previous worldview. And so living in paradox and kind of believing but not believing at the same time is a move into the future. So that's hard. That's hard for people to hear. People want to settle. People want to be in a clear, black and white, either or kind of worldview.
Yeah, they want security.
Yeah, and I understand that. I want security too. I mean, but the problem is those kind of secure boxes, when they all exist in the same world together, end up creating conflict and even violence. So I think that I think it's really problematic the more connected we all become.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's your personal security? How did you find security in this?
I don't have any. I mean, so my security is not needing security in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I have security in other aspects of my life, professional and financial and family. I'm all for security. I'm not against security, but the security that came with belonging to a particular religious worldview, I simply don't have anymore, and I don't want. So in that sense, I have no security in the religious sense, but I find that creative, and I find that very positive.
Yeah, that's totally the way of the magician as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know everything. I know very little about the way of the magician, but my sense is it's primarily creative.
Yeah.
And not believing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. And I think that's the importance, or one of the important roles magicians have to play in our world, to create new ways of thinking and feeling, and the new stories we talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when we do that, then the new stories emerge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the world responds.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we don't have to create them; they show up.
Yeah, but
because we created them.
Yeah, with our participation. It's again, no either ors here.
Yes. Yeah.
It's both and.
It's again, the paranormal reading the paranormal, and the new stories creating us because we create them.
That's right. It's a loop.
I like that.
There's no way out. Actually, there may be a way out, but for a while, there's no way out.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to meet you finally.
Yeah. and I'm looking forward to our beer now.
Yeah,
Yes.
I am too.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jill.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to a production by Edition Prequel and Edition Gwydion. Intro and outro songs from the original soundtrack of Pantherium. Lyrics by Jörg Vogeltanz. Music by Christian Gschier. Text by Diony. More mysteries, mindfuck and magic at YouTube/Reicher Stark and www.reicherundstark.at.